So Bitcoin is booming as the future of Bitcoin in 2021 is becoming more mainstream. So is the Bitcoin boom going to be a bubble or a crash? Bitcoin boom or bust? Well, I'm sure a lot of you have been hearing about Bitcoin BTC in the news recently. I mean, it was just in November 2020, Bitcoin was at £10,000. And then it was a big moment when Bitcoin broke through that £20,000 barrier, and that was at the end of 2020. That was a huge breakthrough. And then just 1 week later in 2021, it went past £30,000 for a single Bitcoin. And an analyst from Citibank recently predicted that the price of a single Bitcoin could reach £230,000 before the end of this year. Now, with this recent boom, naturally as expected, many investors around the world are now getting very excited at the prospects of making a lot of money on Bitcoin. But the classic question still remains, is it going to crash again like it did in 2017? What's the difference between this boom and the 2017 boom? Well, in 2017, the price shot up and then it shot back down again. But this time, it does seem to be very different. I mean, recently, we've seen huge companies backing Bitcoin. A few years ago, people were buying Bitcoin purely for speculation. It was more of a speculative bet. They didn't even understand what it was or what it could be used for. Yet recently, just in 2020, PayPal announced they'll be allowing all of their users to buy, hold, and sell Bitcoin directly through PayPal. This is a huge development because all of a sudden, 360 million people have now got very easy access to using Bitcoin. That's more than the entire population of the US. And now we're seeing many billionaire investors openly sharing that they do have some Bitcoin. So it seems the perception of Bitcoin is completely turning around. Now, when companies that people trust, like PayPal for example, when they start backing Bitcoin, then it really does get people wondering. You might be thinking as well, should I be buying Bitcoin? Should I sell my Bitcoin? Should I hold? Just how long can this boom for? And will it really get to £230,000 like the Citibank analyst predicts? Well, in order to make decisions like this, you need to know why is it that Bitcoin has been booming in the first place, what problems Bitcoin could solve, and what concerns there are around Bitcoin. And that is exactly what this video is about, so do make sure to stick around till the end. Hey, what is up people? Welcome back to our channel, Ralph Finance UK. So let us get straight into it. Bitcoin has been booming. More recently, we've seen the Bitcoin price surge from £10,000 straight past £20,000 and at one point even hitting £30,000, all in the matter of the last 8 weeks. Now, I did already make a video on what Bitcoin exactly is, so I won't be going into that in full detail, but just for the new viewers, a very quick explanation. Bitcoin is a form of cryptocurrency. It's a digital currency and it's decentralized, so that means no government or central bank has sole control over it. And what makes it so different to the paper fiat currency that we know and use today is that there is a limited supply of Bitcoin. There's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoins. You cannot just simply print more like you can with fiat currency. Now, Bitcoin has been going through the roof, but the first thing I'm going to say is that this boom is different to the 2017 boom. People are much more educated about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin now than they were back in 2017. Back then, no one really knew what Bitcoin was and what it could be used for, but people were just seeing the huge price increases, and they were huge price increases, and they were just buying it purely for speculation. Now, some people did make millions of pounds on this, and others did unfortunately lose a lot of money. And you'll find that a lot of people didn't understand Bitcoin, yet it was the same people who were going into debt to buy some, because a lot of people heard if you just buy one Bitcoin, it is a sure way to get rich. So it became a sort of hype. Hype usually signals bubble because people start emotional trading. They always use fear and greed. They panic buy because they don't want to miss out, and then they panic sell at the first sight of a drop. And what does this create? Well, it creates huge rallies and then huge crashes, and that is exactly what happened in 2017. Back in April 2017, Bitcoin was trading at around £950 per coin. By December of the same year, that had gone up to a colossal £15,000 per coin, before crashing straight down to the £6,000 to £7,000 mark by early 2018. And the reason I say 6 to 7 is because it was so volatile. Now, by early 2019, it still actually hadn't stopped crashing, and now it was at around £3,000. So from there, I'm hoping you can see that Bitcoin is very volatile, and that's because there is just so much emotional trading going on. But over the last couple of years, it has slowly started climbing back up again. And now we find ourselves not just back up to the 2017 levels, but way beyond. But the reason I said it's different now is because of perception. Bitcoin isn't just seen as a speculative bet anymore. Now we've actually got institutional investors investing into Bitcoin rather than just the retail investors who were originally just looking to make a quick profit. I mean, PayPal recently announced they'll be allowing their customers to spend Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies in its network of 26 million merchants. The commission-free trading apps Robinhood and Webull, they are now offering cryptocurrency trading. Now, on top of all this, we're also seeing these huge tech companies get involved as well. The payment processing company Square, they purchased £35 million worth of Bitcoin in 2020, and MicroStrategy currently hold more than 70,000 Bitcoins. That's £2 billion worth of Bitcoins. And Fidelity, one of the biggest brokerages out there, they've announced they are creating a Bitcoin ETF. And now it's not just huge companies either, because like I said, we've also got these individual billionaire investors as well. I mean, US hedge fund manager Bill Miller, he recently said, "I think every major bank, every major investment bank, every major high net worth firm is going to eventually have some exposure to Bitcoin or what's like it." Then we have billionaire American investor Stanley Druckenmiller. He said he does expect Bitcoin to be a good hedge against inflation, which he expects in the near future as the central banks carry on this colossal money printing. And then we have another American billionaire investor, Paul Tudor Jones. He says he believes investing into Bitcoin right now is actually comparable to investing in tech companies like Apple or Google before they really became household names. And his position in Bitcoin currently represents around 1 to 2% of his total portfolio. Now, Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, he has said in the past that the people who buy Bitcoin are stupid. Now, not too long after this, he took the statement back, and then the bank started investing into cryptocurrency themselves. So now, not only are more and more people talking about it, we're seeing these big companies and billionaires now investing into Bitcoin, and investing into Bitcoin has become a lot more accessible now. I mean, just a few years ago, you had to buy Bitcoin through a separate cryptocurrency exchange. You had to open up a new account, give your ID and passport photos, and there were quite a few obstacles before you actually had access to Bitcoin, enough to put most people off, whereas now it has just become so much more easier. Now, if we look in the short term, from around the beginning of November 2020, then we can see there were around 55 million cryptocurrency users. Currently, there's around 64 million users, so that is a 16% increase in just a couple of months. And if we look at it from a long-term perspective, then we can see that the number of users has exponentially increased since 2012. In December 2017, Bitcoin hit that high of £14,000, and at the same time, there were just under 20 million wallets. But as the price of Bitcoin dropped all the way to around £3,000, what happened to the number of open wallets? Well, they actually increased. So that shows that people were still clearly believing in Bitcoin even as that price was dropping. And now we're seeing institutional investors who are buying large sums of Bitcoin on the exchanges. These institutional investors aren't just buying a few thousand like the retail investors are. These guys are buying in the billions, and so they're essentially taking a lot of the Bitcoins off the exchanges. And this means that the few Bitcoins that remain are essentially what people are now fighting over, and this is what is driving that price up. So as of right now, we are seeing a shortage of Bitcoin on the exchange, and that is causing this parabolic rise in Bitcoin. And the question that a lot of people are asking now is whether Bitcoin could get up to £200,000 or £300,000 or even more. Well, it is becoming more and more likely. I mean, like I said, we saw it go from £10,000 to £30,000 just in a few weeks. But in order to try to answer that question a little bit better, I want to show you this chart. So this is called the financial bubbles chart. So we start off at the left, and this is called the smart money phase, or the stealth phase, where no one is really talking about it, but it's the smartest investors, they are coming in and they start to put some money in. Then it goes to the institutional investors, and this part is known as the awareness phase. So this is where the institutional investors are investing, but you also get more and more of the public who are starting to get aware of it. They aren't investing just yet, but they are more aware of it. And then you get the public phase, also known as the mania phase, where the price just shoots up as retail investors start pouring their money in, primarily driven by the greed to make some quick profits. So with Bitcoin, I think we're in the institutional phase right now. Institutional investors are spending hundreds of millions of dollars, and these institutional investors are hedge funds, insurance companies, corporations, high net worth individuals. They are buying right now, which is causing that price to go up initially. Retail investors are now hearing more and more about Bitcoin, but I don't think we're at that mania phase just yet. Currently, the retail investors are only spending a few £1,000s to buy Bitcoin. Now, I know what you might be thinking, this might seem like a lot, but I will give you one classical example. Back in the 1600s, during tulip mania, people were selling their houses to buy tulips. Now, I'm not saying that the same sort of thing is going to happen with Bitcoin, but it is possible that we are still extremely early in this cycle, as the general public is still yet to fully buy in. But because all of these institutional investors are buying in, and we're seeing companies like Square and PayPal backing Bitcoin, what effect does this have? Well, it gives credibility to Bitcoin, and as that credibility builds up, that is when we might see the public, the retail investors, start buying in, and that is when we could see that mania phase. And at the peak of that mania phase is where we see the institutional investors start pulling their money back out, and then we typically see that huge colossal drop. So if you know the cycle, then it can help you to determine what to expect. So if we believe in this chart, then we might see Bitcoin rally to say 40 to 50,000 pounds before losing say 60 to 80% of its value. And on the chart, we can see this as the first sell-off. And that is when we could see that mania phase start, where provided people still believe in Bitcoin, they'll be like, right, this is my one and only chance to buy into Bitcoin at a cheap price. And that is when we could full well see the price of a single coin go up to 200 to 300,000 pounds per coin. I mean, if Bitcoin was to drop to £3,000 tomorrow, I'm sure a lot of people would want to buy in, especially the ones who feel like they've missed out on this current rally. Now, I just want to say, if you are finding value out of this video, then if you hit that thumbs up button, you'll get more of our videos recommended to you. Now, ultimately, whatever happens to the price of Bitcoin, you want to understand that there's really only two main mindsets you would have to go investing into Bitcoin. It's actually very simple. One is that you truly do have a belief in Bitcoin. I mean, you're one of the people who thinks that fundamentally it makes sense to buy Bitcoin for the future because you believe Bitcoin is a storehold of wealth, you believe Bitcoin will become more adopted, and therefore the confidence in Bitcoin will increase. And you'll know from my previous video that when we talk about currency, the big word is confidence. It is all about how confident you are in that currency. I mean, if I give you a £10 note, you have confidence you can use this to buy something else. Whereas if I give you a piece of paper with 10 written on it by me, you probably won't have that same level of confidence. So one of the mindsets is that you believe in Bitcoin as a future currency rather than the US dollar. Now, 70% of all currency reserves in the world are in the US dollar, and because the US dollar is the world reserve currency, whatever happens to the dollar affects our British pound, and this is why I'm talking about the US dollar. Currently, the US dollar is a fiat currency. It's a currency that is not backed by anything. It may as well be a piece of paper with 10 written on it because there is nothing stopping the central banks just printing more and more. And we can see this happen so clearly. Back in the 1900s, the US dollar was backed by physical gold in a vault, and so it had value. But humans are greedy, and greed will eventually take over. Ultimately, this is what pushed President Nixon in 1976 to announce they just couldn't sustain the current system anymore. They needed more money than what they had in gold. And this breaking away from gold has allowed them to print so much money, and it's never been more clear. I mean, the Federal Reserve, the central bank for the US, they've already printed trillions and trillions of dollars in response to the pandemic. More than $3 trillion have been created just in 2020, and this has led to almost 20% of all existing US dollars being created just in 2020. And the ultimate consequence of all this colossal money printing is that the dollar has lost a colossal 95% of its value since 1940. So one of the mindsets of the investors who are investing into Bitcoin is that the time for the US dollar as the world reserve currency is coming to an end, and Bitcoin is the future. Now, people seem to think that the US dollar has been around for a long time, but the US dollar in its current fiat form has only been around since 1976, since President Nixon made that announcement. And actually, you'll find that the average lifespan of a fiat currency is only 27 years. we've already got 45 years out of the US dollar in its fiat form, so it could be very well possible that we are due for a change. I mean, the Roman denarius failed, the German paper mark failed, the Venezuelan bolivar failed. We've seen fiat currencies throughout the world fail over and over again in history as the central banks and the governments lose control. And we can see that the Bitcoin price started to boom roughly when this pandemic first started, and that is when the colossal money printing also started. So many people are buying Bitcoin as they believe it's a way to protect their wealth. And with Bitcoin, not only is it limited, it is also decentralized, which means the government don't have any control over it. And so if this mindset of Bitcoin being the future is the dominant mindset for the people who are investing into Bitcoin, then we may see it continue to boom without a huge drop, because it has that level of support and confidence built into it. But we also have to consider the second mindset for investing into Bitcoin, which is speculation. You want to make a speculative bet that Bitcoin can make you rich. And if people are using Bitcoin in this way as a get rich quick opportunity, then confidence in Bitcoin as a currency will drop. And this is exactly what happened in 2017. I mean, I told you, people who didn't even understand Bitcoin were just using it as a trading tool. And this is what created the huge rally and then a huge crash. I mean, when people see all of these big companies and institutional investors are buying Bitcoin and they see that recent rally, naturally, they want to ride the wave as well. It is as simple as that. They may not fully understand Bitcoin or its true potential, but they're just in it to make some quick profits. And if this mindset is the dominant mindset of all the investors who are investing into Bitcoin, then we could see the same thing we saw in 2017 and in every bubble actually, which is the price gets pushed way beyond what anyone ever thought, completely fueled by fear and greed before a colossal drop. Currencies are not meant to be used to get rich. They're meant to be used as a way for you to buy and sell things. So these are the two main mindsets of all the people who are investing into Bitcoin. Now, if the majority of investors are viewing Bitcoin as an alternative to fiat currency, then we may very well continue to see it boom without a huge crash. But if it's a speculative bet for most people, then expect that colossal drop. Now, even with this, there is still an issue, and that is that if everyone does believe in Bitcoin as a future currency, let's just say that for a second, how do you still put a value on it? What is the fair price of a Bitcoin? Is it £10, £100, £1,000 or £1,000,000? Who knows? Because there is no real way to put a true value to Bitcoin. The whole idea is much more skeptical, which could lead to the formation of a bubble, regardless to whether people believe in Bitcoin as the future. A classical example is the dot-com bubble, where it was pretty much the same situation. People knew the internet was the future, and it was. The internet is so widely used today, yet they still didn't know how to put a value on all of these tech companies. All they could do was pour their money into them purely based on these extraordinary future growth prospects, and so the prices soared really high before crashing down. But then what you'll find is over time, slowly and slowly, people have learnt how to value these tech companies, and so the price of these tech companies is increasing over the long term. So you need to understand that even if the majority of Bitcoin investors do think it is the future, even then we may still see a bubble form. And overall, what I will say is this: if you're not ready for how volatile Bitcoin is, then it is not for you. The biggest risk with Bitcoin for now is that volatility. So look at it as a long-term investment. We know time and time again the people who try to time the market and make a quick profit, historically they're the ones who tend to buy at the top and then sell at the bottom. So when people ask that classic question, can I get rich by trading Bitcoin? The answer is, well, yes you can. Many people have and many people will, but it comes at that huge risk due to the volatility. So our advice would be that in the same way many billionaires out there are only allocating around 1 to 2% of their total portfolio into Bitcoin, you should probably also not be allocating much more than this. Now I'm going to end with a quote from the Bitcoin creator, Satoshi Nakamoto. He said, "It might make sense just to get some in case it catches on. If enough people think the same way, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy." So if you found value out of this video, which I really hope you did, then if you hit that thumbs up button, you'll get more of my videos recommended to you. And if you hit subscribe, you won't miss the next one. I hope to see you on the next one. Take care.